remember this, your experiences will move audiences because you can feel them. There's a big difference between learning something and living something. When you live something, you can move people with that.
If you want to be a more effective speaker, you got to know your topic inside and out. You got to study it, you got to practice it, you got to teach it. You got to live it, you got to breathe it.
So thank you everyone for coming. If you could just pat yourself on the back and just know that you're doing this for you and you're improving and you are incredible for being here, because we have two of the most incredible humans that I have ever met. These two amazing people have changed my life, have motivated me, have made me realize what I want to do with my speaking abilities and how far you can improve your speaking abilities. I cannot say enough. You are here today helping you, and I am so grateful because I want to share them with you because they will change your life. So just be thankful you're here. It is amazing. Totally. I don't have the words. I don't have the words because we all evaluate at Toastmasters, and these guys will give you the most amazing feedback, tips, and tools with the biggest heart possible. They are incredible, and I would love to hand it over to the one and only Alan Lazaros and the amazing Kevin Palmieri.
Thank you so very much for the wonderful introduction, Sarah. So before we get into it, Alan's going to do a little frame of what to expect here, and then I'll talk a little bit about who we are, and then we'll get right into it.
All right, so first of all, thank you so much, Sarah. That was so very sweet. Thank you for having us. This is a dream come true. I know at one point Kevin didn't even consider himself a speaker, and now here we are speaking on how to become a more effective speaker. So this is a dream come true. It's truly amazing. This is our first time ever speaking at any sort of Toastmasters thing, so we've heard nothing but great things about Toastmasters, and we're so honored and privileged to be here. So in terms of the logistics, okay, so it's 7:04 right now for us, Eastern Standard. For you, I believe it's 4:04. We're going to go to the top of the hour. So as of right now, we're going to give a 36-minute keynote on the 5 principles that we believe are the most important to being an effective speaker. First one is belief. Second one's character. Third one's expertise. Fourth one is communication. Fifth one is perception. Okay? Then we're going to leave 20 minutes at the tail end for Q&A. So save your questions to the end, but we love the Q&A portion. That's where a lot of the value is. So we're going to be stopping at exactly 36 minutes from right now. First, Kevin is going to open up with telling you a little bit about who we are, and then we're going to dig right into the principles.
Boom. So as of today, we are Next Level University. We are a podcast. We just we're about to cross 630 episodes. We have a top 100 global podcast, and we're listened to in over 100 countries right now, but it didn't start out that way. Again, one of the things I just want to state throughout this entire thing is the reps matter so incredibly much. Okay, so we have 630 podcast episodes. We've done a keynote in our private Facebook group for the last 58 weeks?
I think we're up in, yeah.
So the consistency of reps is something that a lot of people don't understand the importance and the power of, so that's something I'm just going to start with. But, okay, Alan and I connected. We went to high school together. We went to middle school together. We were friends back in the day. Alan had me on his podcast called Conversations Change Lives. He went to the bathroom after, and we had a buddy in the room, and I literally said to him, his name's Andrew, I said, Andrew, imagine if that could be your life. Imagine if you could be a full-time podcaster. And he said, well, Kev, you know you can. Joe Rogan does it. And I was like, interesting. I had never thought of that before. So I dove into Joe Rogan, and then I later that month started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Okay, I was traveling all over the eastern United States working for a construction company, and it got really, really bad. I made a lot of money, but I felt like I was getting taken away from this podcast that I had created that I really, really loved. So I ended up, and again, I'm skipping a lot of my story because it's not, I want to make sure that we get to the meat of it, but I ended up sitting at the on the end of a hotel bed in New Jersey, and I was lacing up my work boots. I had done this 100 times before. It was a cold morning, probably like 5:45. And I'm lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is there was 10 televisions on in my mind at the same time. Okay? Every single one of them was telling me something different. One was saying, Kevin, you're stuck at this job. Like, you just made $100,000 without a college degree. You can't leave. What will your friends think? What will your family think? And do you really, and this was the biggest one, do you really think you could be a successful podcaster and a successful speaker? And in that moment, my answer was no. And at that time, I genuinely wanted to take my own life. Okay, so I was debating suicide, 6 hours away from home in a crusty hotel room by myself. Now, luckily, Alan and I were very close at the time. So I reached out to Alan. Okay, I left my job. 2 or 3 months later, I left my job and went into the podcast. And then I had seen Alan speak at another event because Alan was already really leaning into speaking, but I wasn't a speaker. I had never spoken. As every single one of you is aware, public speaking is the number one fear, and I was terrified of it, and I still am. Still something I'm afraid of. I always want to be honest about that. But after seeing Alan speak, I said, you know what? I'd really love to speak. Like, I feel like after doing podcast episodes, after interviewing people, being able to speak would be amazing. So Alan and I co-hosted an event, and the first time I ever spoke, there was 50 people in the room. I honestly thought I was going to have a heart attack. My hands were shaking so bad. But I remember getting off of my speech and saying to Alan, I actually like that more than I like podcasting. Genuinely, I just felt pulled. I felt present. I felt like I was in flow. It just felt right. All right, and that was probably 3 years ago. Alan and I have co-hosted events. We've spoken in Florida. We've spoken around the country. We've done a lot of virtual stuff. Again, 600 and something episodes, being on other shows. So our goal today is to teach you how to become a more effective speaker because we've put in a lot of reps, and that's a little bit about us.
So, strong work, man.
I appreciate it, man.
So, one of the things that I think is most important about Kevin opening up with that story is that at one point, he didn't even believe that this was possible. He didn't even believe this was in the realm of something that he wanted. Not only to be a speaker, but then to speak on how to become a more effective speaker. So it's truly amazing what can happen when you make one decision and stack that on top of another one, and another one, and another one. And he keeps talking about the reps. I'm going to talk about that a lot as well. And one of the reasons we talk about 600 episodes or, hundreds of speeches or all the coaching calls and stuff like that is because we want you to know that you're not talking to two people who haven't been there. Right now, we have a team of 11 people that are global. One's from Italy, people from across the country, people in the Philippines. And between clients, podcasting, speaking, interviewing people, we have a lot of data about a lot of different people. And we've coached many people who are speakers and who want to be speakers. So it's not just about the message, it's about the messenger as well. And we are people who are very, very dogmatic about making sure that we're speaking on a topic that we know very well. Okay, so we created this framework, and it's called the influence quotient, because Kevin and I want to be the most successful podcast in the personal development industry. We want to be the Apple of self-development. We want to bring personal development to the masses. That is a very tall glass, a very huge goal. And so we were thinking about how do we do this? Okay, every time we got off an interview or we got off of a podcast or we got off of a speech, we're trying to think, okay, what can we do better? What's that 1% tweak? After this, we'll do the same exact thing. So the framework is called the influence quotient. You've all heard of IQ, but that's intellectual quotient. This is influence quotient. Speaking at the end of the day is about influence. If all of you do not go and take some new positive action after this speaking event, okay, then we did not do our job well. Okay, so these are the 5 facets of influence that matter most. The first one is belief. Second one, character. Third one, expertise. Fourth one, communication. Fifth one, perception. And each of these is like a bubble that has sub-facets to it. And we're going to go into each one briefly. Okay, first one is belief. The first thing I have written down here is you must be convinced before you convince someone else. If I'm not convinced that the influence quotient is excellent, exceptional, how am I supposed to convince you from the front of the room that it is? Okay, so you can't influence someone if you're not already influenced. Okay, if Kevin's story isn't deeply meaningful to him, he's not going to tell it in a deeply meaningful way.
And full disclosure, if this was a different speech, I would have went way more into my story and gotten far more emotional. We're tight on time, so I want to make sure that I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing that.
And so not only do you have to believe in yourself, but you have to believe deeply in your message. You have to believe deeply that this audience needs to hear what you have to say. Right before this this speech, Kevin and I were talking, what's your intention? We always come in with an intention because intentional energy is more powerful than non-intentional energy. His intention, he immediately said, to add value. Mine was, I want to change each and every one of your lives, the trajectory of your life at least a little bit. Because if I change your trajectory just a little bit, that can make a world of difference down the road. Okay? So self-belief, but belief in your message. The example that I want to use for this is I personally don't care about cars at all. Okay? I've never been interested. I don't really care much at all. If it gets me safely from A to B, that's all that matters. So if I'm going to give a keynote on cars, it's going to be a terrible keynote, not because I'm a bad speaker, but because I just don't care. Self-improvement is my life. It's everything to me. 24/7, 365, I'm self-improvement. Next level university, next level you. I love that pun. So Kevin and I have to not only believe in ourselves right now, but we have to believe in what we're speaking about. And that's true for you as well.
At the end of the day, the most confident person in the room controls the flow of the room. Okay, so imagine a movie where there's a football team and they're down by 2 touchdowns going into the second half. They go into the locker room. What happens? The coach gets up on a bench and everybody surrounds the coach, and the coach does a speech about, look, I know it's hard. I know we're getting our teeth kicked in. I know it's cold. I know it's raining, but you guys will regret if you don't put all of your effort in. Why can the coach do that? Because the coach is the most confident person in that room. The coach is the person everybody looks up to for information. So if you're on stage, you have to be that person. And people can energetically sense by the way you walk on stage, by the way you stand if you're hunched over, right? You have to own the space, because at the end of the day, if you're on stage, everybody is subconsciously and consciously looking up at you. So anytime you see a movie and you see that character that draws you in, that you're willing to listen to, understand that they're 9 times out of 10 probably the most confident person in the room. Now, that comes with practice. In the very beginning, you probably won't be the most confident person in the room. That's okay. This is why, again, we're leaning on the reps. My first speech, I literally was shaking so bad, you can hear it in the audio because I had a lapel mic on. I genuinely couldn't get through my sentences without, stumbling. It was so difficult. And genuinely, I didn't feel like I was the most confident person in the room, and I think that probably showed through. So focus on the small improvement when it comes to that, but understand you have to own your space. If you want people to look at your space and value it, you have to own it first. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's something that I think goes under the radar for a lot of people.
So this is going to be a surprise point, actually. I think looking at your audience is absolutely critical. Kev, do you mind if we put the audience over, up near the camera? That way they can see it.
I'm already jeffing it.
Appreciate you, brother. Because I keep looking over at you guys over on the right, and I want to look at the camera. Okay. I think if you do that, yep. And then across the top. Perfect. You want to see yourself? Yeah, please. Okay, that's way better. Okay, awesome. Good. So you always want to look at your audience. That wasn't actually the point that I was going to make, but I think it's a good point. All right, so the next one. So first one was belief. He talks about confidence, self-belief, believing in your message. Awesome. Remember, belief can be built over time. You believe in yourselves hopefully more than you did when you were 12. Hopefully at 17, you believe in yourself even more than you did at 16, right? I'm at chapter 32 of this life. I'm 32 years old. I believe in myself more than I ever have, okay? And hopefully next year that's the same way. So confidence and self-belief can be built over time. And the more you speak, the more confident you should become, okay? Now, occasionally you might fail here and there, but overall, you want to keep believing in yourself and building confidence. Second one, character. Kevin and I have a philosophy called character over everything. It's not just the message, it's the messenger. Okay, so I already talked about that a little bit, but here it's basically imagine if I was teaching you, I was on stage speaking about fitness and the importance of sleep, the importance of hydration, the importance of training and nutrition and mobility. But imagine that I'm out of shape and I'm skipping workouts and I'm not drinking my water. I don't have my water next to me. Okay, I do. But imagine if I'm the fitness speaker, but behind the scenes, I'm actually being inauthentic. Okay? Character over everything means be the person you claim to be. Trust me, that will shine through. Steve Jobs used to have a philosophy. It's that the phones that we have, the iPhone, I want it to look just as good on the inside as it does on the outside, even though no one else sees it. That's my philosophy with my character. That's Kevin's philosophy with his character. That's why it's number 2. Belief is the most important thing. If you don't have self-belief, you probably won't work on your character. Number 2 is character. It matters more than anything else other than self-belief. Okay? And then the third one is expertise. We're going to get into that after Kevin talks a little bit about character.
Has anybody ever been to an event? So we go to Brendan Burchard. We've been the last 2 years. Obviously, the pandemic didn't allow us to do that. But there's a point in the presentation where there's the pitch, right? How many of us turn off when there's a pitch, when somebody starts talking about their product or services? I know I do. I'll be honest. Okay? Understand this. At the end of the day, you have to have your audience's best interests in your mind first. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people want to go up and talk about the amazing things they've done, and they want to lead with testimonials, and they want to lead with results. That's awesome, right? That's all fine and dandy, but you have to have your audience's best interest in hand. I genuinely will lose sleep tonight if I get off of this and I don't feel like you guys took something. This is deeply, deeply personal to Alan and I. Deeply. It matters a lot to us. This isn't just a speech. This isn't just a platform. It's not however many of you there are. It's connected to something greater. It's connected to something greater. And we have to make it personal. It's your job to inspire, to influence, to educate, to motivate, whatever it is, whatever your intention is. But that has to be the first and only intention. You can really only set and focus on one intention. Like Alan said, mine's to add value. His was to change your life in some way, shape, or form.
The trajectory.
Right? But it wasn't to get more listeners. That wasn't it. We didn't even talk about that.
I didn't even think of that.
Right. I don't know what we're going to say at the end to plug the podcast. No idea. Genuinely. Now, that might be a mistake on our end, but that's how focused we are in delivering value. We want to be honest. We always want to be honest. So make sure when you get up on stage, or make sure when you get up on a Zoom, make sure when you're putting your presentation together, you're always thinking of it from the frame of the audience, okay? Every single one of our episodes, and I know this is a little bit different, but what a podcast really is a bunch of micro speeches, okay? Every single time we decide the title and we decide what we're going to talk about, we think of the listeners.
Always.
Who is the demographic we're speaking to, and how can we deliver the message in the best way? One of the reasons we say heart-driven but no BS is because our listeners are primarily women, believe it or not. A tattooed bodybuilder and another bodybuilder. Our demographic is primarily women. So our delivery is way different than you might expect. But it's always through the frame of what value can we bring them. Not what can we get, what can we give.
Knowing your audience is so important. The next one is expertise. Okay, so again, belief, character, expertise. Expertise, what is that? Right? It's knowing your field really, really well. It's being a practitioner, though. Okay, so basically, I think of know, do, and results. Okay, how much do you know about your thing? So right now we're speaking on how to become a more effective speaker. How much do we really know about that? How long have I studied that? I can tell you books. I could literally name them. Talk Like Ted. TED Talks is a different book, okay, that's about speaking. Sell or Be Sold. I've studied Influence by Robert Cialdini, another book I've read. I've studied influence for years, honestly, more than a decade. Okay? So how well do you know your area of expertise? This is why I wouldn't speak on cars. I don't know anything. I can't even change my own oil, right? Okay? So it is what it is. But I'm also not speaking on cars. Okay, expertise. Not only do you have to know it, but you have to be a practitioner. You have to actually do it. If we were up here teaching you how to be an effective speaker and we don't give speeches regularly, then we're inauthentic. There's a lot of people on social media doing this right now. They're trying to be guides in areas where they were never the hero. They never went through the journey. Okay? So, know, do. How well do you know your area? How much do you practice what you preach? And then the third one is, do your results prove it? Okay, this one's the hard one because at the beginning, we don't really have a lot of results. Okay? That's why we talk about 600 episodes. That's why I've given over 100 speeches, over 700 one-on-one coaching calls, business consulting, all that. I don't say that to brag. I say it because we're credible. Between podcasting, speaking, interviewing guests all over the world, we have thousands of hours between the two of us studying human beings and studying how to influence them in a more powerful way. Okay, after this speech, we're going to review it and go, okay, what could we do better? We're going to watch and listen to it. Okay, so we're experts because we have the expertise, because we're practitioners, and because we have the results. If you want to be a more effective speaker, you're going to have to actually be the expert. I do know some people out there who are speaking on topics that they really are not the expert about. And they don't put in the work behind the scenes. How many books have you read about fitness if you're going to speak on fitness? Okay, are you in the gym regularly? That kind of thing. Okay, I'll use an example. So I have my MBA, Master's in Business. It's not about that, but I know online there's a lot of people who are business coaches. Okay, I have one main mentor of mine who was the CEO of several billion-dollar tech companies. Again, I don't say that to brag. He knows business, and he knows business very, very, very well. I know some people online that are selling business courses, and I can tell they do not know what they're talking about. Okay, and whatever, more power to them. We can't fall victim to that. If you want to be a more effective speaker, you got to know your topic inside and out. You got to study it, you got to practice it, you got to teach it. You got to live it, you got to breathe it. I know business so well. I'm so passionate. Someone else can take apart a car, build it together, and make it better. I'm that way in business. I understand all the departments. I understand all the different industries. I've studied business owners and businesses my entire adult life. But that's why I talk on business. That's why I talk on podcasting. That's why I talk on social media marketing, because I've posted on social media every day for the last 6 years. Okay? I know some people who literally do social media marketing, and then we go to their social media page, and it's like they've only got like 100 posts, and they wonder why they're not succeeding. Right? It's like I have 1,657 Instagram posts or something like that. Something crazy. I've been doing it for years and years and years, and I've been learning along the way. So are you the expert in your field, really? And how much are you studying, practicing, and teaching that which you're going to go out and speak on? You want to be an effective speaker, you got to be an expert in advance.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest issues for our listeners that we've seen is not everybody has people in their corner trying to lift them to the next level, and even the people who are trying to help don't always know how.
That's why Kevin and I created Next Level Group Coaching. It's a 3-month program on teams of 10 with all people committed to achieving their goals. Click the link in the show notes for more information.
And we only take 10 people at a time, so make sure you get in quick. We're very blessed to have amazing mentors. I don't know if anybody in here knows David Meltzer, but David Meltzer always talks about lessons and stories and lessons, right? He preps his speeches by going in with a story and going with a lesson after. I believe that your speech is only as good as your experience with the subject. Okay, so we have somebody on the team named Jenna. Jenna sent me a message and said, hey, Kev, I want to start a podcast, and very similar to what Alan was just saying. I want to start a podcast, and I found this course. It's only $500, and it guarantees everything you need to know in order to start your show. And I said, Jenna, I mean this with all the love in the world. I love you. That course is not worth $500. I could literally do that for you in an hour for free. Like, you're on the team. You don't have to pay that kind of money. But again, that's only because I've done 600 episodes. I've edited for YouTube. I've done audio editing. I've made intros. I've made outros. I know the equipment. I know the camera. I know the lighting, right? So when somebody calls me to speak on podcasting, it's not something I've studied. It's something I've done. I studied it first, but now I live it. You, every single one of you in here, you may have never spoken on a live stage before. There is something that you are way better at speaking about than I am. And by something, I mean many things. Do we have any parents in here? Every single one of you has the ability to speak about parenting at a higher level than I do. Now, I could guess, and I could regurgitate something I've learned, but I didn't experience it. Remember this, your experiences will move audiences because you can feel them. There's a big difference between learning something and living something. When you live something, you can move people with that. So I would say stick to that. Stick to relevant experiences when you're coming up with topics, when you're coming up with stories, because that's going to become your sweet spot. And at the end of the day, and I think this is an important distinction, and this is kind of just freestyling, you would never hire us, like Alan said, to fix a car. But our branding is our expertise. Self-improvement, habits, productivity, relationships, money, health. That's our jam. So find your niche, and I would say really, really hone it. You don't have to be able to speak on every single thing there is. You want to get really good at speaking on one subject in one area, because that's what you're going to get hired for. Become the best, become the expert of that, and you'll get way more opportunities.
So one of the really good examples of that Kevin just mentioned is none of you are going to hire for $100,000 Eminem to come cook for you. But he would get hired to rap for $100,000 in a heartbeat. in a heartbeat. He could sell out a stadium, right? He's a good rapper. I don't know if he's a good cook, right? But that's my point. Your value to the marketplace as a speaker is in your area of expertise. And you can have a couple. We have health, wealth, and love, self-improvement. But that's everything. Next level you. We're not here. We're here to help you get to the next level of becoming a better speaker. Everything we do, everything we speak about, every podcast topic. I remember one time my girlfriend asked me, what are you most proud of about the podcast? And I said that at the time, we have over 500 episodes talking about how to become better. That's what I'm most proud of. All 500 of them. You could not find a single episode of our show out of 630 that doesn't have something to do with becoming better.
Now, the early ones, the value is definitely limited, but it was there.
You got to start somewhere. Okay, so far we've got belief, we've got character, we've got expertise. Fourth one, communication. Communication is a craft, okay? It's an art. It's something that you must decide in advance to master. I decided to be one of the greatest public speakers and educators to ever live. This was a while ago, and it's not about being better than anyone else, but it's being about my gift. I want my gift to be as well developed as humanly possible. That's one of the reasons I study, practice, and teach so much. So I have a formula, and if any of you have a writing utensil in front of you, this formula is what I consider the mastery formula. I've got a flashcard in my pocket right now, actually, with this formula on it. I call it the mastery formula. Okay. Prep. Rep. Reflect. Perfect. Prep. People are rewarded in public for what they practice and prepare for in private. Okay? Now, we told Sarah, she was on a group coaching call at, I think it was from 5 to 6. We told Sarah that we prepped for an hour for this speech before this. But it's not just the hour. See, we've been preparing for me, over a decade for this speech, in a way. Because we've done so many speeches over time, so many episodes. See, people think prep is just the few hours before the speech. No. Prep is the years and years and years of accumulated study, practice, teach. Okay, so number one is prep. Not just on the micro, not just before the speech. How well are you prepared in general? Okay? Number two, rep. Doing the actual performance. This is where you perform. That's what we're doing right now. Reflect. So critical. So critical. Okay? You've got to review your speeches.
Especially if it's bad.
Especially if it's bad. And that's when you're going to want to review it the least. Okay? We did a speech for the Movement family. One of our friends has a nonprofit organization where he helps the homeless in Lawrence.
You're going to throw me under the bus here?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Is it in Lawrence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was Kevin's second or third speech?
I think this was my third speech.
Third speech. We didn't do so well. We kind of came in a little bit unprepared, and we didn't do so well. After it, we were like, okay, that was brutal. We didn't do great. Okay, let's go watch it. He came into my place later that night. We watched it. We didn't want to watch it. It was cringeworthy. But why did we watch it? Because we wanted to get better. Earlier today, when I first got to the studio, Kevin's been reviewing the podcast. And I said, hey, man, how can I get better? He said, honestly, a lot of the times when I'm talking, you'll affirm me right in the middle of it. And I think it's distracting for our listeners. Because he'll make a point and I'll say, right. Yeah, right. Okay? That's how ridiculously improvement-oriented we are. We used to have an jar where we would have to put money in the jar every time we said I'm still dealing with that. Right now, I don't look at the camera enough. I literally am not. I haven't looked at the camera once. I'm looking at the audience. That's a major problem for me. And when I review this, I'm going to go, you kept looking up. You weren't looking at the camera. You're looking at the audience. Okay? Prep, rep, reflect, perfect. The fourth one is perfect. This is, okay, now that you're aware of all of your quote-unquote mess-ups, let's not feel bad. Everybody messes up. Fail forward. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Okay? I decided earlier today to interrupt him less with affirmations throughout the episodes. Okay? Prep, reflect, perfect. Prep, rep, reflect, perfect. Prepare for your speeches. Perform the speeches in flow. Reflect on the speeches. And then perfect your craft. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. 630 podcasts, 700 coaching calls, hundreds of speeches. Okay? If you think we're even reasonably good, I'm telling you it's that. It's that formula I just gave you. It's all the reps. We were not good originally. I can show you my first YouTube video. If any of you want my first YouTube video, DM at Lazaros88. It is horrendous.
It's not good. It's
terrible.
Not good.
It's a little boy with a big dream. Okay? But now here we are, and you can see the contrast. Okay? Everybody starts somewhere.
So Alan was telling the story about when I bombed that speech. This is how bad it was. And I hope none of you have experienced this. I literally made everybody do push-ups. Like, just panic move was like, hey, let's all do push-ups, right? Like, that sounds like a great idea. Not a good speech.
It wasn't a fitness speech.
No, it wasn't a fitness speech at all. They were like 12-year-old children. I almost lost, too. One of the kids almost beat me. Okay, so understanding this, too, when it comes to communication, if Alan and I did a good job with the branding of this, with the introduction of this, you all should know exactly what we're talking about. How to become a more effective speaker. But why is that? Because that's what we're saying. Okay? So Oprah said this. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them that you're telling them. And tell them what you told them. So many people start speeches with a long, drawn-out story, and that's okay. But make sure people know what they're actually getting. What is a speech at the end of the day? It is a written or a spoken way to solve a problem. Every single one of you has a perceived problem. I want to become a better speaker. What are we here to do? We are here to help you solve your problem. But if we went 20 minutes in and you guys had no idea what the point of this was, that's not a very good speech. We didn't communicate very well. So make sure you're letting the audience know what you're actually talking about. TED Talks are really good at this because, number one, the title is always really good, and they get right into it. A lot of times, they don't even tell a long story about themselves. And again, story is super important. Just make sure you're telling people what you're going to tell them. Make sure you're telling them while you are, and then make sure you tell them what you told them.
That's why we did the pre-frame ahead of time. And we also, the other really important thing that we didn't plan on, tell them the frame, the logistics, so they have clarity, they have certainty. And the questions thing, we said save your questions to the end so that your subconscious mind is primed to think of questions. We had one speech that we gave at Mass Maritime Academy, and we were like, I thought that was really good. How come we had no questions? Oh, we totally forgot to say, come up with questions throughout. We didn't prime their reticular activating system, if you guys have ever heard of that, the RAS. It's basically like when you want to buy a car, suddenly you notice cars everywhere, that kind of thing. So you got to prime your audience to look for questions in advance and then give them the clarity and the certainty that they're going to have a chance to ask them. That's absolutely critical as well. All right, so far we've done belief, character, expertise, communication. Last but not least is perception. Okay.
Last, definitely not least. This might be the most important one.
Unfortunately. So it's last for a reason because Kevin and I are more focused on our personal behind the scenes, the truth, rather than perception. But this will make sense in a second. Okay. Perception, what is that? We used to do an episode often, and it was kind of a bunch of different versions of this, but we call it reality versus perception. Okay. Have you ever met someone who you looked up to and you got closer to the truth of who they really are and been a little bit disappointed? Like, crap, you're not really who you say you are. Maybe someone who you looked up to as a kid and they really let you down with their character. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. Okay, Tiger Woods let us all down. Okay, he did. He let us all down, especially the generations behind me. Okay? It is what it is. This isn't against Tiger Woods. The point is his character did not meet the perception. The perception was that Tiger Woods was a wonderful, well-rounded athlete who cares about people, and he let us all down with his character. His behind the scenes was not what we thought it was. Okay, and again, this is nothing to do with Tiger Woods. I want to get off of that. It's the point of perception. If you give a speech in front of 1,000 people, you have 1,000 different reputations. Okay? You only have one character. Which one are you focused on more? But what Kevin and I will tell you from experience, character over everything, integrity over everything, perception matters a lot. And one of our biggest bottlenecks in our business is that we weren't focused on it. We wanted the product, mind, body, heart, and soul, to be more valuable than the perception of it. We worked harder on the product than on the packaging. Okay? We all bought a bag of chips, and we open it up, and it's only like a third full, and we're like, that sucks. We want to be the opposite. We want to exceed expectations. Okay? But what we will tell you is that when you're building a resume, and Kevin's going to talk about this a little bit, you have to understand that the brand is bigger than the person at first. I'll give you an example. Let's say Ted were to hire me to speak. That is a bigger deal than a speech that I gave at Medway High School. I personally treat them the same. I'm going to do my best either way. But in the marketplace, Ted reaching out to me to speak alongside presidents and CEOs and world-class athletes. Okay, you guys have all seen the difference between TED and TEDx. One of them is a private event where you're not invited, that anyone can host with enough money. The other one, you have to be invited personally. One of them carries more weight. So, long story long here, Next Level You, the podcast, the platform is bigger than Kevin and I. The platform gives us credibility. Okay, if you were to go to nextleveluniverse.com, you would see our online footprint is really well polished, I believe, at this point. It wasn't always that way. We used to have a cartoon avatar. And we learned really quickly that we could be the best speakers in the world and the best podcasters in the world, but if it doesn't look good, and to be completely frank, we had some close friends who look better but aren't quite as good, and they were winning at a higher level. Nothing against them. Why? Because we were bad at marketing. Okay, marketing, for the most part, is making something look better than it really is. Okay? The only company that we've found that doesn't really do this is Apple. They just keep it simple because their products are just that good. So we want to be the Apple of this industry. But what we're telling you, if you want to be a more effective speaker, you've got to have an online footprint that's really, really perceived as valuable, and you've got to really build your credibility up as much as you can. And you owe it to your audiences to do that if you are a character, heart-driven, integrous speaker.
I'm not saying I frequent fast food, but occasionally I'll roll through a McDonald's and get a Big Mac, and usually it looks like it's been run over by a car. It never looks like that on the commercials, so that's just another point of perception of marketing. All right, so the last thing here, and I want to challenge each and every one of you. Each and every one of you is trying to improve your speaking. We're going to open this up for a Q&A in a couple of minutes. If this is out of your comfort zone to ask a question here, I challenge you to do it, because this is a safe place to do it. Alan and I are not going to make fun of you. Trust me. My questions were not good at the beginning of the podcast. Our goal is to add value here. Okay, so the last thing, Alan mentioned this. What is your online footprint like? Okay, this is something that a lot of people aren't necessarily practicing right now. Alan talked about the difference between TED and TEDx. But if you're early in your journey, I don't care where you're speaking. If you're speaking at a middle school, a high school, a Toastmasters event, a meetup, wherever you are, this is where you got to start stacking the reps, okay? And there's a couple reasons for this. Alan and I get reached out to every single week by speakers who want to be on our podcast, okay? If I Google your name, if I look you up on Instagram, if I look you up on Facebook, if I look you up on LinkedIn and I don't find anything, I'm sorry, but you're not coming on the show. Why? Because it probably means you're not that much of an expert. It means that you don't have that much influence with your audience. So when we share this episode, it's not really going to help us grow the show. Now, of course, our goal is value, but the more we grow the show, the more value that we can ultimately bring. Okay? So early, if you haven't started your speaking yet, if you have 5 speeches, if you have 10, if you have 20, reach out to companies that you know. Reach out to friends that you know. Start doing speeches on your Facebook Live. If you're not leveraging your social media, start. Because every single time that you turn on your camera on that cell phone, that's an opportunity for a speech, okay? Every single time Alan and I drop an episode, I literally go on my Instagram story and I tell a story about it, okay? So one of them might be this. Have you ever been in a relationship where you know you need to get out, but you're scared to? You don't want to hurt the other person, but you realize by not hurting that person, you're hurting yourself. Today, episode at noon, all about how to get out of a toxic relationship. Boom. Every single time I do an episode or we do an episode, I do that. So it's not just here where we're practicing. We're practicing on our cell phones, right? We're practicing on the podcast. We're practicing on our team calls, on our meetups, on our coaching calls. So every single day is a new opportunity to practice speaking. Now more than ever. None of us have an excuse to say, I didn't I didn't have any opportunities to speak. If you have a cell phone, you have an opportunity. If you don't have a cell phone, you have a mirror. Every day is a new opportunity to get better when it comes to speaking.
So before Kevin and I ever have a guest on the show, we actually have been taking them through this influence quotient. And we rate them from 0 to 10. How much do they believe in what they're talking about? How much are they really who they say they are? Their character. Okay? How well do they communicate? We look at their IGTVs, we look at their YouTube, all of that. How well are they really the expert at what they're talking about? Okay? And then do they have the perception in the marketplace that we need to leverage on our platform? Okay? If they don't have the character, we never have them on. But you got to have all 5. Okay? It's really, really critical. We have some people who look really good online who behind the scenes really aren't that strong of speakers. But they get more gigs than the strongest speakers who don't have an online footprint. Especially, I know some speakers that are in older generations. I'm 32. I know one person who's 45, I believe, at this point. Unbelievably strong speaker, but if you Googled her name, you wouldn't know it. Remember, online footprint matters most. Before you buy a product on Amazon, you're going to look up the reviews. Okay, so if your LinkedIn's not on point, your Instagram's not on point, your Facebook's not on point, your website's not on point, you gotta look good. It's not just what you know, it's what you can show. And trust me, we wish it wasn't that way, but it is. The packaging matters just as much as the product.
And now, and again, COVID has been a crazy thing and it's been a tragic thing, but it also has opened up virtual speaking, right? This is way more okay and accepted than it ever was. There's way more opportunities now. Right? We can say after this, we can say we spoke at Toastmasters. We didn't even have to leave the studio. We're still in Worcester, Massachusetts. We've been in here all day. That is another thing. Now, what that also means is a lot of these things, your expertise might not have to be as high because they're not paying you to fly across the country to speak. So as the barrier to entry goes down, the opportunity goes up. So if you're not reaching out to people, make sure you're doing that too. And I know that's a hard part of it, but networking. Be known for the one thing you want to be known for.
100%.